Welcome to this walkthrough of the Razor's Edge NXT Code Tables report via Power Automate. There are two versions of this report, a schedule report and an on-demand report. Both versions produce an email report. The schedule report is easier to set up and may be the one for those just getting started with Power Automate. The on-demand report does take a bit more setting up to do. The email report contains a table of contents of all tables in the system with links that jump to the individual listings. As part of the individual listings, there is a link that takes you to the corresponding table directly in Razor's Edge NXT WebView. If you're new to Power Automate, the first thing you need to do is determine if you already have or if you need a license. If you're a Microsoft shop, you may already have a license. Speak to your IT to determine if that's already part of your subscription. If it's not, or you primarily use systems such as Gmail, there are options for getting this one off, including special pricing for nonprofits. Not everyone in your organization needs to have a license, just those administering the workflows. It's recommended that you have at least 2 licenses so one person can be a backup. You also need to connect your Razor's Edge NXT instance to Blackbaud's Power Automate connection. It takes just a few moments to set up. Someone with environment admin rights will need to head to Blackbaud Marketplace, search for Power Platform, and click Connect on the resulting screen. Our example flows are shared with Blackbaud's dedicated Microsoft Power Platform online community. This is also a place to go for any questions or assistance, as even flows shared by Blackbaud employees are not covered by support. Let's talk about the scheduled report, which, as mentioned, is the simpler of the two to set up and a good starting point if you're new to Power Automate. There are a few requirements to get this set up. Just like you need to be an environment admin to connect Razor's Edge NXT to the Power Automate app in the marketplace, you'll also need to be an environment admin or have access to someone who can log in as an environment admin for this to work. This isn't necessary for everything that connects to Power Automate. This is a special use case. You will also need your environment ID. When using the web view of Razor's Edge NXT, take a look at the address bar in your browser. The part after envid equals is your environment ID. For these types of shared templates, you first have to download them. The community post that discusses these templates has a link to where you can download the files. There are 2 zip files, one each for the scheduled and on-demand. We'll focus this part of the conversation on the scheduled. Download that file, but do not unzip it. If you need some additional visuals, we'll go through a step-by-step process later in the video. First thing you need to do is import the template. Go to the Power Automate website where you'll find My Flows to the left. Once you click on that, you'll see a button for import and an option for import package legacy. You'll browse for and select the file you downloaded. There will need to be a couple of connections you'll need to create that we'll cover in the upcoming video. After importing the flow, there'll be a few areas you'll need to update. The first will be the recurrence schedule. Click on recurrence and you'll see options for items such as how frequently to run as well as when to run it. Next is a README section that has a number of things to review and take actions on. One of the items this emphasizes is that this is an example template and not covered by Blackbaud support. If there are any questions about the example, the community is the place to post them. Next, click open the area that says Initialize Variable Environment ID. This is where you'll need to put the string that follows the envid equals from the address bar when you're using Razor's Edge NXT WebView. Put that in the value box. Next, click on the Initialize Variable Report email. Update the value box with the email address of the person who will get these reports. Lastly, we'll need to save the workflow. You can do that in the upper right. Now, go back to My Workflows and make sure you turn it on. This is turned off by default. Sometimes it may do an initial kickoff and do a first run. If not, you can manually kick it off. Now let's see this in action. Here we are logged into the Power Automate site. The left is My Flows. I'm going to click on that. Once there, I'm going to see the import at the top. Upon clicking on that, I'm going to select Import Package Legacy. On the Import Package screen, I'm going to click Upload and then select my scheduled file. This may take a few moments to process. On the next screen, I'm going to scroll down and note there are some items I need to handle. Under Related Resources, I'm going to see a couple of pieces I need to set up or connect to my flow, the Mail piece and the Blackbaud Sky add-ins piece. In the Import Setup column, I'm going to click Select during import. Under the name and resource type in my example, I see nothing. That's because I haven't connected email yet in my environment. So I'm going to select Create New. This is going to open a new tab and take me to an area I can make my new connections between the flow and the resources it needs. I'm going to click Create a Connection and click on Mail. If I don't see that, I can search for it in the upper right, not at the top. That's a different search. It's going to ask me to review and accept and create, which I will do. Once that's completed, I'm going to see Mail in my connection list. While I'm there, I'm going to click New Connection again, and then the upper right, search for Blackbaud Sky. I see that it pulls up the Blackbaud Sky add-ins that we saw on the previous list. While I'm here, I'm going to go ahead and create this connection. When I click on this, it will prompt me for my Blackbaud ID login that I used to log into Razor's Edge NXT. This is where you'll need someone entering in credentials that has environment admin access. Since the screen for Blackbaud employees may look different than for the typical user, I won't show that part of the process. There will be a prompt asking you to confirm your connection between your data and the Power Platform. If you have access to just a single database, you won't see any dropdowns. If you have access to multiple organizations, such as a parent-child organization setup and or multiple systems, you will see selections. Make sure you select the right one here, and then select Authorize. Once I see my Blackbaud Sky add-ins and mail connections, I can close this tab and go back to the original one. Once I'm back at the screen that has the Import Setup flyout, I'm going to click on Refresh List. I'll see the mail connection I recently made and will select that, and then click Save. When I'm back to the screen, I'll see an X beside mail, which in this case means I've taken care of that step. I'll click on Select during Import on the line that says Blackbaud Sky Add-ins. Since we just created that, I'll now see it in the list and we'll go ahead and click that and then save. Once I'm done with both of those, I'll click Import. The final process may take a few moments. On the resulting screen, you should see all package resources were successfully imported, and then a slightly hidden link that says Open Flow. Click on that Open Flow link. This is a flow that will process all the steps needed to generate my automated report. If you've worked with the workflow designer in Razor's Edge NXT, you'll see a number of similarities. Clicking on each step will open up its contents where you can make adjustments. For example, you can click on Recurrence and see the default settings. Clicking on Edit will allow you to change these to meet your needs. The next thing to take a look at is the README step. Clicking on it will show an additional set of actions. Click on the top README and follow those directions. Under Initialize Variable Environment ID, this is where you enter the part of the address in your browser that follows envid equals when you're working in Razor's Edge NXT. Make sure you paste in that value area. This example pasted here is not a real one. Then click on Initialize Variable Report Email. In the value box, type in the email address of the person to get the emailed reports. Stop here. That's it. You don't have to make any other changes to get this going. However, we do want to save it, so click on Save at the upper right. It's not active yet, as it was turned off by default when it was imported. Let's turn that on by first clicking on My Flows to the left. We see that the flow icon is a bit grayed out, and that has the no circle there. If you hover over that line, you'll see 3 vertical dots. Clicking those 3 dots will show a number of options, including turn on. Let's click that. Sometimes turning on a scheduled flow will go ahead and kick it off for the first time. Let's see if it's running by clicking on the name of the flow itself. On this detail screen, you can scroll to the bottom and observe any current and past runs, including its status. If the topmost line says running, then it's already kicked off. Give it a few minutes to conclude and then check the email of the recipient. It took around 4 to 5 minutes in our example environment. Yours may vary. If you want to do an initial kickoff or run it manually at any time, such as after correcting an error or making a change, click the run at the top of the screen. The flyout that appears will confirm you want to run it. Click Run Flow at the bottom and then Done. If you want to edit this at any time, click on Edit at the top and you'll go back into the designer screen we saw earlier. When the email comes through, note that the from address won't be from your organization, but a Microsoft one. So if the flow says it's finished and you don't see it, check other filtered folders. As we see here, there is a table of contents at the top. This will show all tables, even if they have no entries. Click on the code table name in the table of contents will pop you to the area in the report that lists the entries in that table. This will show you all entries, even if inactive. Clicking on the code table name from here will take you right to the table setup in Razor's Edge NXT WebView. Now, even though there are only a few things you have to change in order to set up the flow, there are a couple of areas you may want to change to fit your needs. To do that, let's go back to our flow detail screen and click Edit. I can scroll down to the area that says Scope Tables, where I will see a number of areas. The first is going to be the Send an HTTP request list tables. The only thing you should review here is the line item that says Include Hidden System. Switch this from true to false if you want to hide the system-generated tables. Scrolling further down, you'll see an Apply to Each Get Table Entries. Click on that, and then the Send an HTTP request Get Table Entries. Like the hidden system tables, you can flip this from true to false to hide inactive table entries. Finally, if I scroll all the way down, I can click open the Send an Email notification where I can adjust items such as the subject. Be careful not to remove the placeholders we see here. There are also options for removing this generic email notification and replacing it with an Outlook or Gmail option so it looks like it's coming from your organization, but we won't dive into the specifics here. If you want to simply save these changes for the next run, click Save at the top. To both save and do a manual kickoff to check your work, click Test at the top right, choose Manual, and it will then prompt you to save this and run it. This concludes the discussion on how to set up a scheduled version of this flow. If you're interested in setting this up as a link on the main homepage of Razor's Edge NXT, that brings in additional moving pieces. The link from the community post that has the files to download also has instructions on how to create the on-demand version. Note that this includes creating a Sky Developer account, a Sky app, and Sky add-in, and the links in these instructions takes you out to documentation for further information. Thank you for checking this out. If you have any questions on this, feel free to post them in the community.